I'm afraid every moment we'll bump into them. I'm going to land at the little cove I told you about the other day, said George. There's only one way to it, but I know it very well. It's hidden away on the east side of the island. The girl cleverly worked her boat in and out of the rocks, and suddenly, as it rounded a low wall of sharp rocks, the children saw the cove she had spoken of. It was like a natural little harbor, and was a smooth inlet of water running up to a stretch of sand, sheltered between high rocks. The boat slid into the inlet, and at once stopped rocking, for here the water was like glass, and had hardly a wrinkle. I say, this is fine, said Julian, his eyes shining with delight. George looked at him and her eyes shone too, as bright as the sea itself. It was the first time she had ever taken anyone to her precious island, and she was enjoying it. They landed on the smooth yellow sand. We're really on the island, said Anne, and she capered about, Tim joining her and looking as mad as she did. The others laughed. George pulled the boat high up on the sand. Why so far up? Said Julian, helping her. The tide's almost in, isn't it? Surely it won't come as high as this. I told you I thought a storm was coming, said George. If one does, the waves simply tear up this inlet and we don't want to lose our boat, do we? Let's explore the island, let's explore the island, yelled Anne, who was now at the top of the little natural harbor, climbing up the rocks there. Oh, do come on. They all followed her. It really was a most exciting place. Rabbits were everywhere. They scuttled about as the children appeared, but did not go into their holes. Aren't they awfully tame? Said Julian, in surprise. Well, nobody ever comes here but me, said George, and I don't frighten them. Tim, if you go after the rabbits, I'll spank you. Tim turned big sorrowful eyes on to George. He and George agreed about every single thing except rabbits. To Tim, rabbits were made for one thing, to chase. He never could understand why George wouldn't let him do this. But he held himself in and walked solemnly by the children, his eyes watching the lolloping rabbits longingly. I believe they would almost eat out of my hand, said Julian. But George shook her head. No, I've tried that with them, she said. They won't. Look at those baby ones. Aren't they lovely? Woof, said Tim, agreeing, and he took a few steps towards them. George made a warning noise in her throat, and Tim walked back, his tail down. There's the castle, said Julian. Shall we explore that now? I do want to. Yes, we will, said George. Look, that is where the entrance used to be, through that big broken archway. The children gazed at the enormous old archway, now half broken down. Behind it were ruined stone steps leading towards the center of the castle. It had strong walls all round it, with 2 towers, said George. One tower is almost gone, as you can see, but the other is not so bad. The jackdaws build in that every year. They've almost filled it up with their sticks. As they came near to the better tower of the 2, the jackdaws circled round them with loud cries of chack, chack, chack. Tim leapt into the air as if he thought he could get them, but they only called mockingly to him. This is the center of the castle, said George, as they entered through a ruined doorway into what looked like a great yard, whose stone floor was now overgrown with grass and other weeds. Here is where the people used to live. You can see where the rooms were. Look, there's one almost whole there. Go through that little door and you'll see it. They trooped through a doorway and found themselves in a dark, stone-walled, stone-roofed room, with a space at one end where a fireplace must have been. Two slit-like windows lighted the room. It felt very queer and mysterious. What a pity it's all broken down, said Julian, wandering out again. That room seems to be the only one quite whole. There are some others here, but all of them seem to have either no roof, or one or other of the walls gone. That room is the only livable one. Was there an upstairs to the castle, George? Of course, said George,